What's going on, guys? It's your boy Beats by Ash, back at it again with another banger of a video. And today I'm here with
Justin Meeker.
And what did you do this weekend, bro?
Oh, I top 32'd with Ace.
Okay. And what were your matchups?
My matchups were round 1, I played against Zoro. It wasn't even close. Round 2, I played against Whitebeard, another wash. Round 3, I played against Katakuri. Those are my only losses this weekend, were 2 Katakuris. The game was very close. The guy ended up pumping with the last 2K at the very end. I pitched 8 event cards for 13K swing, and he just got there with 14 at the very end with no more counters. After that, my round 4 pairing was another Zoro. I beat him. Round 5 again was, I believe it was Dofi. That game was interesting because he played the Sentimaru package with 7 Warlords, which was kind of crazy because it worked a little bit, but like I could tell it was clashing. Round 7, my other Katakuri loss. That guy just kind of blew me out. The on-curve plays he had were just great. I saw no searchers, no removal. It's the only thing that Ace really relies on, and you just can't see any of it, so you're just going to lose. And then round 8, played against Kid. The guy unfortunately lost because he didn't place his life. I was really looking forward to that matchup because he was playing the film package, and I definitely think Ace excels in the green by far. But he had to unfortunately receive a game loss. And then round 8, I played against Whitebeard, one of my close friends, Braden Phillips. Unfortunately, I had to take him out, knock him out of the top 64. And then round 9, I played Smoker, and that guy just did not have a good time.
What made you play Ace? Because I think there's a common misconception in the community that Ace has a really bad matchup spread, right?
Yeah. So to be truthful, I was gonna go in the event. I was testing Katakuri. I was testing Dofi because to me those 2 decks are virtually the same because you're swinging 7s and you're creating a lot of pressure with your character cards. But I went to a friend of mine's house and he said, "No balls, you won't play Ace." So I was like, "All right, you know what? I'll prove it." There's been too many people playing this game saying Ace is like super trash, especially being a 3rd-rate deck, considering it's like the 3rd red leader that people aren't playing. So I just wanted to prove a point, and I think I did it this weekend because Ace, it has a very good matchup into Zoro. Great matchup into Whitebeard because Whitebeard wants to play for the late game. I think any other color it doesn't struggle with. I just think I didn't get enough testing in properly against yellow to be able just to get there.
Okay, awesome. And before we get into the deck profile, do you have any shout-outs? Shout-outs always at the beginning because the people will skip to the end.
Gotcha. Yeah, I want to do some shout-outs to Colin Downs, the man, the myth, the legend that made me play Ace right here. I want to give shout-outs to PBE and MetaMonster Gaming. Those are the guys that are always out there, helping us get to these events. I also want to give shout-outs to the Tulsa community that's also having me help test. Ashby, he's a great player, gives great insight on deck lists and deck videos to go ahead and help other players. Grant Nugent, he top 16. I appreciate him. He's my brother. Long life. But yeah, no, that's about it.
Awesome. Go ahead and take us through the deck.
All right, gotcha. So we got the leader. We'll just go ahead and place it up here. So this weekend, I played 3 Buggy. I know this is kind of a weird curve. A lot of people would opt for 4 because they want consistency. But I just think for the way I played this weekend and the space fitting wise, I just felt Buggy was needed at 3. Every time I played it, I hit an event I needed. There was definitely an MVP event this weekend that I think most Ace players will agree that they should go up to 4 of because a lot of them play it at 3, but we'll get back into that later. I also played Izo at 4. Izo's your main searcher. Izo finds you the rest of your broken events that you're going to play for Whitebeard Pirates. It finds you all of your Marco 5 drops. It's going to find you your 7-drop rushes. It finds you your 1 4-drop blocker that you don't have to play, but I think the card's still good of a linchpin for you to just play in any red deck. And then, of course, you're going to be playing Makinos because it's a 2K counter. Why not? And it works well with Weenie Rush. Your opponents are going to always expect you to probably be playing Makino if you're playing with red, because if you're playing searchers, why not? If you can swing with them and they can swing tall for low value.
So did you immediately think that you needed to play the buggy package over the striker event because of like the red matchups?
No, I think I just played the buggy package based upon what Ace just strictly wants to do, because you want to create presence. Striker's good because you can fill up your hand, but I think when it comes to the late game, yeah, you might have filled up your hand with events that you can pitch to just either push or defend yourself. But I think creating that pressure early put your opponents in an awkward spot to be able to, like, oh, I've got to deal with this character. And with Buggy's effect, saying that it can't be killed by slash characters, it makes a big difference.
Or leaders, it's broken.
Or leaders. Yeah, it's completely broken. You play against Kinemon, 90% of the stuff they're playing is slash. So they're just going to have to deal with Buggy just sitting there. And then we also played 4 of Otama. Otama just negs the board. It's kind of a need when you see your opponent play big cards like Whitebeard or, Rush Shanks, Big Mom. I mean, she just kind of gets you there whenever you want to do your Fire Fist turns as well, because there's a lot of times where you'll play against yellow or you'll play against red when you need to remove 2 separate targets, but you're like, oh, I just can't get there because someone's got a 6K body and, they've got, a 5K and a 4K, but you want to be able to remove that 6K body off the board. And what's it going to hurt if you just play one Otama? And then let's see here, what else we got? We've got our 2 costs. We got 3 Fosa. The reason why I opted to play Fosa this weekend was because Ace doesn't need the blockers, but when you play blockers, it forces your opponent to also have to play off curve. And if they're not playing anything really that's red, then they have to deal with this card with Marco, and that means they have to spend 5 Dawn to be able to remove this before they can actually start pressuring you. If they decide to play pressure cards and they don't get rid of this card, then you're going to be able to pressure them with your other weenie cards, or you get to go ahead and play Otama and then blow up their Marco blocker, and then you can swing with lead and then swing another 6K by pitching another event. So then you're just getting more value, because then they have to try to play around this card. Same with green, because green will have to rest it. Black can blow it up, but black just has that issue with when they're playing removal, they have to pitch extra cards. We also opted into playing 2 of these. I was on the fence because I did have it at 3. I also was looking at Blamenko. Blamenko is searchable with Otama. It's searchable with We Are the Whitebeard Pirates, but I felt like Blamenko was too easy of a target to just be blown up. But Brook just gets you there, because not just negging 1 target 2K, you get to neg 2 targets. And this really helps in the Whitebeard matchup, especially in yellow, because when they're playing these Big Mom bodies and you don't want to just Flame Emperor, you want to hit 2 separate targets, especially in Whitebeard, because they play a 5-drop 7 and a 6-drop 8. That just gets you there to be able to just kill both those cards. And the card just counters for 1, so there's no reason to play it. And if your opponent forces you to go second, on curve, you're just playing it on 4 Dawn, it doesn't hurt you, because now your opponent has to commit a lot to remove this card. And most of the time, this card's just going to sit there. And then we played our last but not least 4-drop, the only myth, the legendary Marco.
Free this man.
Yeah, free this man. He does what he does. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think Marco's going to come back the way he was, even with the upcoming set 4. After, I've done a lot of testing with Queen. I think it's okay for this card to come back, but I do understand it's broken. And I just think there's too much of an outcry for this card to stay where it's at. Same with Whitebeard. So I think that's why I feel like the card's not going to come back. But personally for me, I think it's okay. I don't think them limiting cards like that is okay, because it shuts off a lot of deck creativity. But I think that's also the same thing too. When you limit cards, it should create more deck creativity, because then you have extra spots to fill it in.
Yeah, personally, I'm not a fan of one of limits, because I think it makes it feel more sacky when it's a card that's not locked behind a specific leader, because then when one person has the one of Rad Beam and you don't, you feel like, damn, if he didn't have that card, then I would have won.
Exactly. And it's the same situation, like if it's not leader locked, then your opponent just sits there and has to be like, well, I guess we can all play this one card instead of just being that one leader. We're still playing Whitebeard Pirates, so we got to play 4 of the 5-drop Marco. This card was definitely one of the MVP character cards this weekend.
Best card in the game.
Yeah, reason being, it's like this card, but you're playing Ace, so you get more value out of this card than anybody else will, because Whitebeard's only playing so many limited events, and they want to keep those cards to protect themselves late game when they're not taking that life. The other thing too is that you can go ahead and keep swinging this with 6 on any of your other opponent's Marcos, and this card just feels much more safe in your hands because you are playing Ace. It removes problematic bodies like the weenies because who's not playing searchers in any of their decks for the most part? This hits every searcher.
How many times did your opponent not attack into your Marco and think that you have events and you just have 0 events in hand?
So, to be honest, I always had events in hand this weekend. I had one match where someone didn't swing until they're like, oh, the guy's playing Ace. He's going to have 12 events in his hand. He was just worried about it. He's like, I'm just going to leave it there. Well, I told the guy, I was like, listen, you got to be able to create pressure on this card. No matter if you're playing Ace or playing against any other red deck, you've got to get those cards out of your opponent's hand. Because it's either they have it or they don't, and the card dies. That is just plain and simple, clean cut. This card just removed the other weenies when I played against red decks, especially when it threw them off curves. So then they were left with dead Machinos in hand or Otamas in case they wanted to swing weenies and stuff into it. As well as it was a huge linchpin with this because then I could go ahead and swing with Brook, neg something, and then go ahead and play Marco. My other, this was an iffy. A lot of people questioned me on this, and it surprised them all weekend. I played 2 Rush Luffy. My big reasoning behind this was because there's too many people that turtle so late game, especially Whitebeard, Law, especially behind their little blockers. Even Dofi. Dofi will sit behind blockers for a little bit, like Kuma's, and they'll wait late game so they can go ahead and block and get their Pacifistas out. But I felt like, if I play it at 1, I'm going to see it or I'm going to bottom deck it. It's going to feel bad, but it'll be okay because if I see it, I see it. But I told myself, if I see this, the second one, it's guaranteed game because my opponent's going to turtle up and they're just going to die to that card. All weekend, I promise you, I saw both of these cards and kept them in my hand every game, every single time. The card just creates so much presence whenever you're going through a turn and you don't want to play a Marco if your opponent doesn't have something to blow up, which is still okay. You should still play this even if they don't because you're just trying to create that presence. But Rush Luffy creates a problem that they have to answer because if they don't want to have an unblockable character swing at them the whole time, like, well, I got to kill that card. Well, since you're playing Ace and you're playing all these other cards that you can counter with, you're just like, okay, yeah, I'll pitch for that. Or I'll pitch 2K for the Luffy. Now they spent the whole turn trying to kill a Rush card that they're going to have to deal with next turn, and now you can just go ahead and play another Marco, or you can start doing Weenie Rush. So I just felt like this was the call for me. Do I think it's a change that I could take it out? For sure. I just didn't see any other events or characters that I felt like I should play. With the upcoming set, there's probably some stuff that'll change in here, for sure. But Luffy was he was really strong this weekend. I definitely ended 3 of my games with him this weekend, especially with both of them. I'd bait a lot of people by playing 1 and swinging with it, and like, oh, I killed the 1 of Luffy, and then they saw the second one, they're like, oh, well, I guess I screwed up because they expect the 1. And then last but not least of our characters, we have Ace. Ace just gets you there. On curve, you're going to play your Searcher. You're going to probably be playing more Searchers, and then you're going to play Marco, and then you're going to play this or Flame Emperor. There's a specific reason why Fire Fist is you pay 3 Dawn and you pitch a card, because on the 10 Dawn turn, you can neg 2 things, 3K, and you're blowing up almost anything that your opponent puts on the board. And the card has Rush. So especially if you're going through turns, your opponent's not killing your Marcos or they have Marcos, Ace can allow your leader and then itself to just create pressure on it, and you're constantly removing cards out of your opponent's hand because they just don't want to get hit.
How did you feel about 3 Ace? Did you ever feel like you needed the 4th one?
Nope. Ace is strong. I don't think he's meant to have 4 of, because I played a lot of cards that I actually didn't play a lot of cards that didn't have a counter value. I think I probably played at most maybe 7-ish, which was the buggies in this. Because you're already utilizing more Rush with this, I don't think you should play Zoro ever in this. I think it's just a dead card. But I felt like Ace is like your top end, and he just gets you there because swinging at 7, most of the time, even if you're swinging at Whitebeard, you can swing for 8, you're going to get a guaranteed 2K or an event out of their hand. And that's what you want to do. And you just creating that pressure, it alleviates pressure off of Marcos, and it alleviates pressure off of anything else you have on the board. But if you're going to go into a 9 Dawn turn and you swing Ace and you play Fossa, they have to deal with Fossa before they can play this. And then if they're stuck doing that, then they're going to have less resources dealing with this.
Yeah, especially because your ace is just answering their threat that would be challenging your ace on the folding turn.
Exactly. Even if they neg it and you're playing another ace matchup or even Whitebeard, they still have to deal with this card beforehand. So now that we've talked about all the characters, let's go ahead and get into the events.
Before we get into the events, why did you decide not to play Vista? I know a lot of people are playing Vista in just about every red deck right now.
Yeah. I opted not to play Vista. It was I felt like to pay 3 Dawn for this deck to just play the card for removal, I think it would have been fine. Like maybe I cut these 2 cards for Vista because you're going to go first and you just want to pop something else. Because let's say you go first and you Seaquake something and then you play Vista, you create another body. I think I just felt like I needed something else to be able to create more presence, because if I played Vista, then they could just Vista my Vista, and yeah, you could just go back and forth on it. But then when you play Vista, and if they Marco a Vista, it just feels bad because you played 3 Dawn when you could have played 2 Searchers, and yeah, their Marco turn, they've only killed one thing instead of killing one, instead of just killing multiple. So I just felt like me being able to do more with my Dawn efficiently during the 3 Dawn turn was more of a call than just playing one body that can potentially blow up a 3K body on board.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's go ahead and get into the events.
Gotcha. So a lot of people might burn me at the stake for this. Go ahead and clean some of this up. So I only played 3 guard point. I probably should have played 4. I don't feel like I needed the 4th one, to be honest. Like I said, I'm going to get burned at the stake for it, but I probably should have played 4, but I felt like I didn't because I wanted to have specific numbers of room for the extra removal I had. The card was good. It did what it needed to do. I think I only used it once in all of my games, and I only used it to protect. I used it to pitch for Marco. Most of the other times, the other 2, I pitched just to swing for game. It really wasn't to protect me from dying or anything. It was always just to protect Marco.
Okay, that's fair.
And then the one of Rattle Queen, obviously, I just felt like this was the 4th of here. And again, I just wanted the extra space for the other events that I was playing. So I felt like it was easy to suffice for just playing this as a 4th one. And then we played 3 Seaquake. This card's just broken in Ace. Whitebeard players are still playing it. The card just does what it needs to do. It blows up 3K bodies on the board, especially people that are playing Weenie Rush, Zoro, or anybody that just wants to swing with low-end cards. It just gets you there, especially if you have to go second and your opponent's like, oh, I've got a 2-drop 4K body on board. You can just go Otama and Seaquake, or even do it to a 5K body, because your opponent might, oh, that might be a feels bad type of play, but still blowing up a potential big body, it just gets you there.
How many times did you turn 1 pop your opponent's buggy on the draw?
Bro, every time. Buggy, Sunny Coon, you name it. Even Pudding, they all got it. It did not. No 1-drop survived unless it was mine. And then so the next event we played 3 Crossfire. This one was a last-minute change. This was at 2. But Crossfire is just really good because the trigger, you get to activate the card's main. So it has activate main and counter. You can choose one of your opponent's character cards and give it -4 for the turn. So the turns that your opponent's gonna try to push into your ace or your Marco or anything, or let's say they're trying to pump up a Sunny Coon or something up to like 12K, well, you automatically pay 2 and you drop that thing to 8, and then you can go ahead and pitch 2 other cards that you want just to feel more alleviation towards that. Because then you don't feel like your opponent's just gonna completely out you. And there's a lot of people that try to rush Luffy me at the end. I'm just like, dude, okay, it's not gonna. It feels more bad if someone rush Luffy's you at 11 with the 5-drop play swing and putting all the Dawn under because you got a blocker. Well, if you got 3 Dawn up and you neg 4 and then you go ahead and put it down to 7 and then you guard point, it's just a real feels bad moment for them. And just regardless, like I said, it's got a trigger and it does the same thing. It doesn't hurt. The only thing that felt bad is it doesn't hurt leaders. And I think a lot of people really read this card after seeing Whitebeard top with it quite a bit. So a lot of people, I think, tried to play around it. but I don't think a lot of people expected me to play it at 3. Here's a red card that every red deck should be playing, in my honest opinion. Fiery Doll. This card is absolutely bonkers. The trigger is the same as Red Hawk. If you guys don't know what it does, you can choose one of your opponent's characters or leaders and give it neg 10k power for the turn. That's really strong, especially going into a Whitebeard matchup or even Big Mom. Big Mom gets slammed on the board and she's able to swing the next turn, and your opponent hits you with Katakiri first, and you're like, oh, we'll just neg 10 that, and it ends up becoming a 2k swing. That just saves you. Well, I never had that issue. I didn't have to use the trigger. I did pitch this card a few times for Marco, but it's because I always knew the second one was in there, and I knew it was searchable with Buggy and Ezo. Paying 2 Dawn for a 9k swing is ridiculous. Very ridiculous. And if you get to play 2 of these, that's absolutely absurd, because that's a 13k swing for 4 Dawn, and you can at least swing for almost 20k every single time if you get to pump 2 of these. Most of the time you're gonna only see 1, but it's even good for you to just pump it on your leader and remove problematic cards that you've just negged. So you could go a turn and neg Whitebeard 4k if you don't have a removal card and you don't want to commit too much Dawn into a play. You just pay 2 and then pump your leader up to 9, and now Whitebeard's down at 6. You can pump your leader to put 1 more Donner, go to like 11, and then the card just dies. Because your opponent's not going to try to save that card.
Especially if you have like a Porcus D-Ace on their Katakuri, and then you pay 2, it's like it's guaranteed to die, right?
Exactly. Let's see. Everyone should know, Ace is playing Fire Fist, like I said earlier. There's a reason why Ace is a 7-drop, and why Fire Fist is a 3-drop.
The card of the weekend.
Yep, the card just, it just works with each other. And playing Ace, this card, it just synergizes more because you want to play more events, because Ace can just pitch, and protect himself and play offensively with the events. So the more events you play, the easier it is for you to utilize this card just for more removal. There was a lot of times I pitched another Fire Fist, and yeah, I did play it at 3, but it felt okay just to play it at 3. But I'd always pitch, a Seaquake, because I've already popped the other 2 cards I wanted to pop, or I pitch a Crossfire because I didn't need it that game, or I pitched it for a guard point. There was only one time I pitched it for this, and it was because this was the only other event in my hand at the time. But that was a desperate need moment. I did pitch this for Marco a few times, but mostly this one. But like I said, Fire Fist, it's good. There's a lot of people that think that the card should be hit. I don't think it's broken. I think the card is pretty good. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably call it an 8, but I don't think it's broken. The trigger's good. KO's a 5k or less. I think that's fine. Our next event that we played one of. This was at 2. I'll get into it and a reason why I switched it. The card's good. It's a 4-drop, paying 4 Dons, low commitment, blowing up a 6k body. The trigger, same thing. There's a lot of times my opponents would just swing wild, and they're like, oh, this guy's not playing a lot of jet pistols or whatever. And then they would run into life, and then this just blows up one of their Marcos. Well, now they don't get to swing with that Marco. Yes, will they get the effect again? Sure. But I think it's still okay if they get the trigger at twice. Now the card's rested, and I get to go ahead and apply pressure onto it.
I think it helps that literally every single one of your events has a trigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was definitely red trigger.deck.
Red Curry, man.
Yeah, it definitely was Red Curry. But the thing was that I didn't want to cut the card because it is what it is, but I kept it at the 1 because I have 4 more copies of it, which we're going to get into right here. This was the MVP all weekend, and anybody that'll tell you that I played against them just cried when they saw this card. If they hit it in my life, it was Jet Pistol. It blows up a 6k body or less. The event, you can blow up an 8k body or less, and you give your leader 3k for the turn and double attack. Which, creating that much pressure, I can't tell you how many times in red matchups I would literally just activate this card, and I would hit a Marco, and then they would just, okay, I'm going to go ahead and pitch an event and play with Marco. Well, now that gives me reason to go ahead and swing another Marco into it. Well, now I get another card out of their hand. Oh, now I get to swing leader into it again, too. That's 2 cards out of their hand. Yeah, maybe they saved it, but now they've got to apply pressure into my Marco, and they lost 2 cards out of their hand that they probably wanted to keep. I saw so many people, especially Whitebeard players, pitch their Radical Beam, their 1-of, because that was what they had in their hand. because they didn't see their fire fists or they didn't see their guard points. So they had to pitch for the Marco, so they had to do this, which felt really bad for them. Which maybe in another world, if they had this card in hand or they had Seaquake, they would have pitched those, which I'm pretty sure they would have. But I just think applying the pressure on the cards that I know that they're going to try to save so they can win the game later just created so much tempo for me that I just blew so many people out.
Since you have less sustainability with the restrictions now, do you think like this is like the entire like heart and soul of the deck? Like you really need to be focused around the Flame Emperor to try to end the game early?
So I didn't even really end the game early. I used it to mostly just remove problematic cards because it takes longer for Ace to really just set up its top end because your on curve plays are Searchers and then you're playing a Marco and then you're going to go into Ace. But I do think Ace needs to revolve more around its removal aspect, control, instead of just trying to play strict aggro. Because if you play strict aggro, the same thing's going to happen to you that happens to Zoro players. If you end up playing against another Ace, they're just going to blow up your stuff. And you're not going to have as much value as Zoro because your cards aren't 6k bodies, they're 5k bodies. I think overall, I just think that this is where Ace should be. If I was to like really just change anything, it probably would be one of these. This might go to another Fire Fist, or this might go to another Jet Pistol. Crossfire felt underwhelming for me this weekend, but the card does what it does, and when it gets you there, it gets you there. The whole time this week, I never felt like I was in danger of any games. I think the only game, besides the 2 games I lost against Katakuri, the only games that I was like really low on live was probably my first Zoro matchup because it's just the first match of the day, early game jitters. I just kind of like let the guy hit me, and then he hit me with one big swing with like Fiery Doll when I hadn't created a board yet, and he put me at 1 life. I was like, oh, okay. He just did that, and then I just progressively just proceeded to just remove his board. I played Fossa after Fossa. The card I just think it is your other option into Marco Blocker. Yeah, it's not as great as Marco Blocker, but if people want to play that defensive strat again, Fossa's your only option. Just know he is susceptible to anything else that's on this board that's going to just kill it.
And did you have any consideration to add an additional top-end card like the one of Newgate or the Shanks?
So I did test it. In testing, Shanks performed better than Newgate. Newgate I feel like most people, when they have a boss monster card, they feel obligated to play it, and I think that's why a lot of people struggle in most of their games, because they see this card, I can't wait till I get to this turn, I want to play it. Well, by that time, they're trying to sit there and waste resources so they can play it. Their hand is empty. Yeah, they got to play a big card, but that card's also the reason why they lost that game.
True.
I think that's the reason why I opted to just go ahead and play the 3 Ace and play the Luffy's, because on low curve, I get to go ahead and just play this many rush bodies, and my opponent still has to deal with these cards. It's going to be the same concept as dealing with a Newgate. Yeah, the card's bigger, and it can blow up a blocker, but they still have to commit 2 Dawn and then Newgate to go ahead and blow up something that's little and then swing big. And then they still just fall susceptible to stuff like Crossfire, or, they might get more events at your opponent's hand, but most of the time people are going to take those swings. Any Newgate I saw hit the board this weekend did not survive. Only 1 Big Mom out of 3 survived every single game. But that was pretty much it. I mean, all my red games, I finished with 3 life. They weren't really close. The green matchup was unfortunate. I really was looking forward to it. The Smoker game, that guy was nervous because it was for the last spot for top 32. If my 2 opponents that beat me hadn't lost, they would have went X2. I would have made top 16. But they scrubbed out against Law, which they so rightfully deserved. But it's my fault why I lost those matches, because I just didn't get enough testing against Yellow. And, for the next regional, I'm going to do a lot better. I'm going to aim to win that event. I might play Ace, seeing as some of the new red cards we have are pretty decent. So I guess we'll see what happens.
Do you think it's going to be viable in the next set?
I definitely do, because a lot of people are going to be switching over to other colors because I think people are really tired of the stagnant Zoro and Whitebeard. Yeah, it's getting them wins, and I think people are still going to lean on it, but Ace just does what he needs to do, and he does it well against every other color better. it's unrealistic. Like I said, just dealing with Fire Fist, any Searcher for Seaquake, and then any top-end card your opponent plays just feels bad. Because Whitebeard players would consistently just sit there and go, I'm going to play a 5-drop. I play a Speed Geo, 4-drop for 6. Well, it's gone. I'm going to go ahead and play Thatch. It's gone. And then they would, I can't remember the other one, but there's 6-8, and there's, that one's gone too. So this card just created a lot of problems for those people that wanted to play big cards. Even in Katakuri, they play 7 Mom. You can go ahead and take that life, or you can give them the life, and if you do, you're just going to give them those 2 lives back anyways, without having to create as much pressure on yourself. That's just the biggest issue, is trying to decide in the yellow matchup whether or not you're giving them life, or you're going to go ahead and take the life. Because I think it just really depends on really what position you're in, because there's a lot of times that surprise me. People played the 4-drop Katakuri, and I didn't have an answer to deal with it, so I was forced to use Flame Emperor, and by the time I Flame Emperored, it was kind of game over at that point. So.
And last question for the people who are not as familiar with the deck. You chose to go first most of the time, right?
I did choose to go first most of the time. My reasoning for going first was because your first couple turns, every deck is going to play Searchers. So if you see your events to remove them, why not remove them? And plus, you want to search before them anyways. The quicker you can start filtering through your deck, the easier it is for you to find other answers throughout the game.
That's very fair. Are we going to be seeing you at the up-and-coming Texas Regional?
Yes, sir. You will see me there, and you're going to see me at the top tables. Like I said, I'm aiming to win that event. It might be with Ace, or it might be with Queen. I'm just going to kind of gauge it as it goes, seeing how the meta plays out these next couple months. But I think Ace is definitely a top contender, so people don't cut it short. I promise you. If you play against the Ace player at locals and maybe he's losing, he's probably slow rolling you guys until you get to the big event, and he's going to blow you out.
All right, Justin. Well, congratulations on the top. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to smash the like button, turn post notifications on, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another banger. And as always, if it's not the goo, it's got to go. Peace.
Peace.
Ooh, is that indigo?